You're listening to Ask When, the podcast. Folks from all walks of life talk about their daily hustle and bustle, living and celebrating life, sharing tips on becoming champions, especially for those who are muscling mental and physical disabilities. Ask When, the podcast, with your host, who has mustered over 30 years living with cerebral palsy and going strong, author and cerebral palsy advocate Wynn Charles. Ask When, the podcast starts right now.
Welcome to Ask When, everyone. Today I have the fabulous Joe with me, and Joe is actually a teacher, believe it or not, and how Joe and I met is through Sean Douglas's Rise Above Youth Summit. She and I both part of that, and so that's how Joe and I met. And I'm gonna let Joe take it away and explain more about what her story is and why she's involved in the summit.
Well, thank you so much, Wynn. I appreciate this opportunity. It's great to talk with you. So I am a teacher. I'm a theater teacher. And of course, at this moment, I'm not interacting with my students. They are full of heartbreak because they missed out on a very large state conference, and they are missing out on producing their spring musical, and will probably miss out on all the end of the year awards that we give out to celebrate their hard work and saying goodbye to the leadership of our seniors. So it's a really tough time. Not only that, but of course, teachers are learning to teach online. So I wanted to point something out about theater education that I've been fascinated with the past several years, and that is that theater education is infused with what I am going to call this concept of spirituality. And what I mean is not something that is religious, but something that is secular and rooted in the idea of finding stillness and using breath and feeling connected to people through community and having a sense of presence. And of course, the idea of mindfulness has become pretty popular both in business and in education lately, but it's present everywhere and all the time in theater education. What I find especially fascinating about this time of this global pandemic is that I am beginning to see aspects of what I'm thinking of as spirituality emerging all the world over. We're needing to share, we're needing to trust, we're needing to be connected. And in the course of a regular school day, it's not my experience that those components are present in everyday school life. There's focus on mandated tests and achieving particular scores. It does find itself present sometimes in the football field and other athletic events, for example, whenever kids are connected. But it is always present in the theater classroom. And so the irony is that while we see global connectedness, I'm struggling and searching to find ways to keep my own students connected.
And so I think that's a great point, Joe. And I also was a teacher. I retired, unfortunately, because of what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And my school had no plan as my ex school, not the school that I'm in. I'm also getting a journalism degree, but that's beside the point. But my school that I taught at had no plan as to what they were going to do with me.
Huh. And how did that make you feel?
Well, it made me feel heartbroken, it took me
Yeah.
a couple days to realize that, oh, yes, I am out of a job, essentially,
Mhm.
because um, even though I was part time, they had no clue as to what was going on because a lot of the schools out here in Colorado were just coming off their spring break, so including my
Mm.
own. So they had no clue as to how to assist the teachers, and they had no clue as to how to assist the kids. And then when I asked them, and Joe, I literally tell you, they said, we have no plan put in place, and social isolation is the best for you. And I'm like,
Mm.
bye, guys, because you guys don't know how to support. You can't see the forest for the trees right now. You guys don't know how to support your teachers, let alone a teacher with a disability. And so, good for you for trying to connect, still keep connections with your kids.
Well, well, thank you. I would say that our school district, where I teach here in Bowling Green, Ohio, is struggling to communicate with us on a very regular basis. They talk a lot about the empathy that is required for administrators to talk with faculty and for faculty to talk with students. We all recognize that none of us have had this experience before, and we have to work through it together. I would like to believe that our school district is working really, really hard to try to keep our community connected to our students. But we all recognize that it's not easy, and it is easy to feel lost, especially when we're isolated.
And in these smaller communities, I just was meeting with someone this morning. Actually, it was my counselor who I meet with every single week, and she was saying, well, what is making you angry and what is making you most upset? I said, well, the fact that the disabled population is not getting the respect and the love they need right now. I mean, students are struggling all across the country, me included, and but I think that the special ed population is even struggling more because one, they're out of their routine. Two, it's hard to do one-on-one work when you're in social distance mode.
I completely agree with you. It's hard enough to stay connected with the students who are not disabled. I believe who are able-bodied, who don't need services to help them navigate on a daily basis. And sadly, we've never had to experience something to this degree that's made us so challenged. And I suppose we all wish that we had answers or that we had gone through this before, so we knew what to draw upon, but we don't. And so, being cognizant of that component of our school systems that are marginalized for multiple reasons, economic ability, is it needs to rise to the surface of our attention.
It does. It does. And now, I have a question for you. If your best friend was going to write a book about you, what would the title be?
I think the title of my book would be Spring Peepers and Children's Laughter, because there's something about those two things that I think resonate with me deep inside. The spring peepers resonates with me because it's a sound that I grew up with from living in the country and hearing them, and it always would connect me to a place that was both distant but also very, very deep inside of me. And the children's laughter, it's the sound that children make when they're watching live theater. It passes in waves. And there's another sound that's connected to this that wouldn't be in the title of my book, but I always say that if I had a soundscape for my place in heaven, it would include spring peepers, and the sound of children's laughter, and the sound of my husband's voice calling my name.
Yeah. No. And so, yeah, but what would be your best advice for those who I hate to call them retired teachers, but those teachers who unfortunately got laid off due to what's going on right now. And for those of you who are listening to this in the future, we're going through the worst world health crisis I have ever seen in my life, / economic crisis. And so for those, aka the coronavirus, and it's hitting worldwide now. And so for those who are laid off from their teaching positions, what would you suggest, Joe? And then I'm going to say, for those who are senior masters like you and who are still trying to connect with their students, what would you suggest that they do?
I would suggest for any teachers who have been laid off, first of all, make your situation known, because I think in these circumstances, we are all willing to help each other out. So we have to give to those who have less than us and who are struggling. We have to. And we have to believe that this will end and will come out, as everybody says, on the other side, but it will be a very different panorama. And we have to be willing to look at that panorama and move forward with whatever that's going to look like. In terms of us teachers who are working to help students now, oh boy, we just have to stay connected. We just have to keep finding ways to stay connected. We have to be creative in ways to connect. We have to reach out one student at a time sometimes. And I will say that one thing that I found fascinating working with kids online now is that sometimes I'm having really short but meaningful conversations with kids that I probably wouldn't have had in the classroom because they're surrounded by 20 other students. So, one of the bright sides is that I can see inside of my students in a way that I might not have been able to see otherwise.
Well, that's the bright side of teaching. No, and I am blessed enough that my job will still pay me until June, and I am blessed enough that I was prepared. I wasn't prepared back in 2008, 2009 when I lost my job, but this time I am prepared. I have my podcast, I have my books, I have motivational speaking, so I am prepared, and I agree with you, Joe, that we will come out on the other side of this.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, there's no other time for people to say we're all in this together. Which funny thing, a year ago we were staging the High School Musical and we sang that song constantly. And who would have thought that a year from then we would be saying it with such serious purpose?
Oh, jeez. No, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Someone said to me, we're living in a Stephen King book called The Stand. And I'm like, okay. And it's this
Yeah.
debate publicly. And I'm like, no, we're not. No, we're not. I like the High School Musical adage better. We're always just together. I like the way you're thinking. I didn't like the Stephen King reference, although that person said, okay, we're in the Stephen King reference. But yeah, but it's interesting how people think about. Now, do you have any questions for me as we wrap this interview up?
Well, I'm curious to what extent, when you teach, do you find pockets of connectedness with your students? When do you find places where you and your students can experience stillness together? At what points do you know that you've had a moment of true connection with those students?
Well, I taught preschool for I was in the education sector for a total of 13 years. Would have been 13 years in May. But I will still qualify it as 13 years. But I find and I taught preschool. So, and I also taught third grade. But I find the older kids who have a smaller, who have a bigger concept of, yes, Miss Wynn is disabled. Yes, she's different. But when I get it's not necessarily from the kids I got this, it was from the parents that the parents would say to me all the time, and I didn't think they were noticing how I impacted the kids. And so that's what I truly want to do, is impact the next generation of people with disabilities and impact their parents as well, because I think it's these generations, we go through these generations, we're learning more and more about disabilities.
Right. And you know what's fascinating is that, I mean, I often tell my students this too, because many students are disabled not in a physically obvious way, but they may have degrees of anxiety or all kinds of internal things. And I would like to remind them that disability is both external and internal, and we must be sensitive to that. You know, and so I believe that having teachers who are successful as they demonstrate that success isn't encumbered by disability is the most amazing role model. And I hope that more teachers find their way into the classroom who can communicate that.
Well, yes, and I have one other question for you. What made you sign up for the Advice About Summit? I mean, what made you want to get involved with this summit?
Well, I guess you know, I had the opportunity to do a TED Talk, a TEDx talk. It was local last year that put a lot of these thoughts together, and I had been practicing my TEDx presentation with some of my students and a couple of young people from elsewhere around the country, and the response that I got from them was meaningful. I knew that they were listening because I was talking about them, and we don't often help our students realize the depth to which they are fully emerging human beings. And I think that that's both a compliment and a challenge to young people. And so I wanted to share those thoughts with whoever might tune into the summit.
Well, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And Sean said to me that he posted it on Facebook. I've been sneaking around Facebook a little too much. And so I said, use a retired teacher who has a disability, who's also gay. Thank you very much. And I thought, well, this is going to be my next calling. And I'm realizing that so many people want to hear my story that for me to concentrate on school, you guys, I have to be picky and choosy now of course who interviews me because I can't concentrate on school. I can't be doing as much podcast work as I was doing or am doing. And so for those of us in the education field, those of us who are blessed enough to we be reinventing ourselves or like me, and those of us who are still in the education field, we need to stick together. We need to stick together because, as Joe said, we're all in this together. And as Joy from Little Finding Nemo says, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And that's the adage that keeps going to my head, just keep swimming. And so, yeah, it's like we need to stick together and we need to check in on those people, that we need to check in on our colleagues. We need to check in on the people that we love because all across the country, the counties are not, I don't know about and where you are, Joe, but out here in Pickens County, the counties are not checking in on us. And so, what would be your advice for someone that wants to be helpful to a stranger and do something nice for them? Should the counties be checking in on the teachers, or should the counties just be checking in on people in general? I know that the senior population is getting checked in on, but I'm more concerned about the disabled. And is there any thing in your county that your county's doing that possibly could be modeled all across the country?
Well, I don't know if you heard about the very large now group of young people in New York City who, through Facebook, began to organize and are now delivering meals to people who are shut in. They self-organized. I and almost every one of my video conversations with my students with make sure you find someone today to help. So I think that the more we remind people that other people around us need help, as much as we may feel like we're struggling, there are people who are struggling more than us.
Yeah.
And so I think that reaching out even on the smallest level can do a lot. And I think that we need to help somebody every day.
I agree, and of course, I didn't see that where the students in New York self-organized, but I think that's great, and I didn't see that, but I'll look more into that. But I agree with you, Joe. We need to help one another on a daily basis now. And you guys just put one foot in front of the other, yes. And of course,
Yep.
I'm watching the snow, you guys, as I record this snow cold white stuff, and I'm over the snow. I'm over social distancing. I'm over self-isolation, but it's okay. But as long as we will stick together, we can make it through this, you guys. So let's make this world a bigger, brighter place. And Joe, where can people find you if they choose to do so?
They can find me at Bowling Green High School in Ohio. And so it's my email is jgonzalez with a Z at the end at bgcs.k12.oh.us.
So, yes. So you're welcome to email Joe, and I appreciate your time, Joe, and I know this is a difficult time for each and every one of us, but I appreciate all the listeners still tuning in and hopefully gaining a little bit of hope in the time of need, in the time of uncertainty. And I appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode of Ask Win. Thanks to you guys.
Thank you, Win.
You just listened to Ask Win, the podcast. To become a guest in the show, visit our website at askwin.weebly.com or call 816-591-3399. Just look for Danielle. Connect with Win on Twitter at WinKellyCharles and like our Facebook page at Butterflies of Wisdom. You can also purchase Win's book through Amazon.com or get a copy of the audiobook through Audible. Ask Win, the podcast.